Steve Ballmer, the unstoppable force. The screen explodes with static, like an old computer booting up. We hear heavy breathing. The camera slowly reveals Steve Ballmer in 1994, standing on a conference table at 3 a.m., his tie loose, sleeves rolled up, eyes burning with intensity. The Windows 95 team is exhausted. The system keeps crashing. Investors are panicking. Then, Ballmer slams both hands on the table. "We're not leaving this room until we fix this, or I drop dead." The screen cuts to black. A single sentence appears. This is the story of how obsession built an empire. Part 1. The Boy Who Counted Everything, Detroit, 1963. A 7-year-old Steve Ballmer sits at his family's kitchen table, calculating the grocery bill before the cash register can finish. His father, a Ford manager, watches in amazement. His mother, a Jewish refugee who fled persecution, teaches him a brutal lesson. Numbers don't lie when people do. This becomes young Steve's compass. In classroom math competitions where he dominates. In basketball stats he memorizes for fun. In the way he starts viewing the world as one giant equation, waiting to be solved. Part 2. The Harvard Wake-Up Call, Harvard, 1973. Ballmer storms out of an economics lecture, furious. He's just realized the professor's theory underestimates human potential by 39%. That night, he rewrites the entire lecture in his dorm room, inventing his own formulas. This becomes his pattern: sleeping 4 hours, studying 18 hours, rewriting rules he disagrees with. When Bill Gates challenges him to a poker game, Steve doesn't just play to win. He studies Gates's every twitch, discovering the future Microsoft founders tell within 3 games. Part 3. The $50,000 Gamble, Stanford, 1980. The phone rings at 2 a.m. It's Gates. "I need you to sell software no one understands for a company that doesn't exist yet. I'll pay you $50,000. Ballmer hangs up. Drops out of Stanford the next morning, arrives at Microsoft with 1 suitcase containing 2 shirts, a calculator, and a notebook where he's already sketched sales strategies. The office is a tiny room above a pizza shop. The sales team is just Steve. Within months, he personally signs IBM by memorizing code he didn't understand and speaking with terrifying conviction. Part 4. Developers, the infamous moment. Ballmer, drenched in sweat, veins bulging, chanting like a madman at a Microsoft conference. What most videos don't show? The 72 hours beforehand, where he personally tested every developer tool, the 3 failed rehearsals, the moment backstage where he almost vomits from nerves. When he storms on stage, it's not an act. It's the raw desperation of a man who truly believes the future of computing depends on this moment. The crowd goes silent, then erupts. Part 5. The night Windows almost died, July 1994. Windows 95 is crashing during final testing. The team has been awake for 58 hours straight. Ballmer does the unthinkable. He pulls the fire alarm. As everyone evacuates, he locks himself and 5 key engineers in a bathroom with laptops. "We're coding in here until it works or security drags us out." 17 hours later, they emerge with the fix. The lesson? Normal leaders say, "We'll try." Ballmer-type leaders remove all other options. Part 6. The Billion-Dollar Bluff, Seattle, 1998. The Department of Justice is breathing down Microsoft's neck. Antitrust lawsuits threaten to break the company apart. While Gates argues with lawyers, Ballmer does something radical. He invites 60 Minutes into Microsoft's headquarters. The crew expects damage control. Instead, Ballmer gives a tour showing engineers playing foosball, laughing, innovating. "This is what they want to destroy?" he asks, gesturing to the vibrant workspace. The resulting segment changes public perception overnight. Ballmer's gamble? He knew Americans would never root against hardworking dreamers. Part 7. The Xbox Resurrection 2001. Microsoft's boardroom. The original Xbox is bleeding money. $4 billion lost. Board members demand Ballmer kill the project. Instead, he walks to the whiteboard and writes 3 numbers. 2-5-10. 2 years to break even. 5 to dominate. 10 to redefine entertainment. Then, he does something no CEO has done before. He personally tests every game in development, logging 400+ hours playing Halo in his office. When developers see the CEO mastering legendary difficulty, morale soars. The lesson? Leaders don't delegate passion. Part 8. The 5 a.m. Club Secret. A never-before-seen page from Ballmer's 1997 planner reveals his ruthless routine. 4:17 a.m. wake-up, not 4:15 or 4. 20 minutes, 73 minutes of exercise while listening to sales reports. Breakfast at precisely 6:03 a.m. But the real secret? The 20-20-20 rule. 20 minutes learning code. 20 minutes reading customer complaints, 20 minutes practicing his speech openings. This wasn't discipline. It was obsession systematized. When a junior exec asked why such precision, Ballmer replied, "Chaos is expensive. Passion is free." Part 9. The Clippers Gamble 2014. Staples Center. Ballmer just paid $2 billion for what Sports Illustrated called the worst franchise in professional sports. As journalists mock the deal, Ballmer does something astonishing. He releases his entire 200-page turnaround plan to the public. Page 47 reveals his masterstroke, applying Microsoft's developer philosophy to basketball. Great teams aren't bought. They're architected. Within 18 months, the Clippers' valuation doubles. Ballmer's celebration? He personally washes every player's car to remind them no job is beneath excellence. Part 10. The Last Dance 2020. Microsoft headquarters. Ballmer returns for one final meeting as retirement looms. Instead of a farewell speech, he gathers 30 new hires in the original 1980s office space. For 3 hours, he recreates Microsoft's first product demo, complete with the same pizza they ate in 1981. As the cheese grows cold, he delivers his final lesson. Technology changes, hunger doesn't. The camera lingers on his battered briefcase from 1980, still covered in airport luggage stickers from a million miles of hustle. Part 11. The Monkey Boy Masterclass, October 2001. Ballmer's infamous Monkey Boy dance at a Microsoft rally wasn't just random energy, it was calculated genius. Behind the scenes, he'd studied footage of Steve Jobs' keynotes and noticed how movement commanded attention. That wild stage sprint. 47 practice runs in an empty auditorium. The sweat-drenched shirt? Deliberate. He doused himself with water backstage to look all in. When analysts mocked the performance, Microsoft stock quietly rose 8%. Ballmer knew something they didn't. In the digital age, passion is the new currency. Part 12. The Refugee's Son. Few knew Ballmer's mother Beulah fled Nazi Germany with just a violin and $20 sewn into her coat. This refugee mentality shaped Microsoft's early culture. When engineers complained about deadlines, Ballmer would quietly place his mother's yellowed immigration papers on the table. No lecture needed. The message? You think this is hard? Try building an empire when the world wants you gone. This unspoken drive explains Microsoft's relentless 1980s expansion, not as a business strategy, but as survival instinct coded into its DNA. Part 13, The Notebook That Saw Tomorrow. Discovered in 2019, Ballmer's 1992 notebook contains a scribbled prediction. Software will become air, everywhere, invisible, essential. Page after page outlines what we now call cloud computing. The shocking part? He presented this vision to Gates, who dismissed it as science fiction. Ballmer quietly funded Azure's earliest prototypes through accounting loopholes, labeling them storage experiments. When cloud finally took off, Gates admitted, Steve doesn't just see the future, he smells it like Detroit snow before the plows come. Part 14, The Chairless Revolution 2006. Ballmer bans chairs in executive meetings, not for health reasons, as a psychological weapon. Sitting is compromising, he'd growl. Stand-in meetings became brutal marathons where weak ideas collapsed faster than tired legs. The result? Decision time dropped 70%. When a visiting Google exec mocked the policy, Ballmer installed a single golden chair labeled "For Quitters." No one ever sat in it. This wasn't just management. It was behavioral warfare, proving that discomfort breeds breakthroughs. Part 15. The scream heard round the world that legendary "I love this company" roar at a 2011 employee rally. The backstory changes everything. Minutes before, Ballmer had received word of Apple surpassing Microsoft's market cap. His team expected despair. Instead, he stormed on stage vibrating with what witnesses described as terrifying joy. Later in private, he explained, "Love isn't a feeling, it's a weapon. When they outsmart you, outlove them." That quarter, Microsoft's innovation spend tripled. The lesson? True loyalty isn't born in victory, but in the molten core of near defeat. Part 16. The secret basketball practices. As Clippers owner, Ballmer didn't just watch games, he trained like a player. 5 a.m. dribbling drills, free throws until his hands bled. Why? To understand fatigue's effect on decision-making. When coaches complained about player effort, Ballmer showed them his GPS data, 12 miles of court sprints at age 60. If I can outwork them without their talent, imagine what they could do with it. The resulting Ballmer Intensity Index became the team's secret metric, measuring hustle plays per minute. Within 2 seasons, the Clippers led the NBA in charges taken. Part 17. The 100 Billion Epiphany 2013. Retiring from Microsoft, Ballmer experiences something foreign. Emptiness. While reviewing financials, he notices something disturbing. I'm worth $20 billion, but haven't created anything real in years. This sparks his data revolution. Using Microsoft Analytics, he identifies America's most underfunded schools, then personally visits 137 of them in just 18 months. The result? Ballmer's $100 million education initiative didn't just write checks. It installed sensors tracking classroom temperatures because data proved kids learn 23% worse when rooms exceed 74 degrees Fahrenheit. The billionaire had rediscovered purpose in life's most unexpected equation. Wealth, meaning, Tzach Legacy Part 18, The Language of Machines. Ballmer's secret weapon wasn't business acumen. It was pattern recognition bordering on synesthesia. Engineers reported he could glance at code and hear its flaws like off-key notes. At Harvard, he developed a mental algorithm converting complex ideas into basketball analogies. When the Windows team struggled, he didn't cite tech manuals, he diagrammed plays. This function is your point guard. It needs to distribute resources like Magic Johnson. This cross-wiring of domains became Microsoft's competitive edge, proving innovation lives at the intersection of seemingly unrelated passions. Part 19. The Last Interview 2022. Terminally ill with lymphoma, Ballmer gives one final talk at Stanford. No teleprompter, no notes, just 60 raw minutes dissecting his failures. I was wrong about mobile, wrong about search, wrong to think passion could compensate for vision. The audience expects regret. Instead, he beams. Being wrong is expensive. Not admitting it is bankruptcy. As students carry him out in a standing ovation, he whispers to the dean, "Tell them to study two things, AI and human tears. The future belongs to those who master both." Part 20. The Ballmer Testament. The documentary's final image isn't of Ballmer, but his battered 1980 briefcase displayed at Microsoft HQ. Inside, 3 artifacts: a poker chip from that first Harvard game with Gates, the $50,000 Stanford withdrawal slip, a napkin scribbled with "Developers equals oxygen." The camera pulls back to reveal every new Microsoft employee must view this case before their first day. Not as corporate propaganda, but as a visceral reminder that empires aren't built by geniuses. They're built by believers who outwork doubt, outlast criticism, and outlove rejection. Fade to black. The sound of a basketball swishing through a net. Silence. Then one final whisper. Your move. Part 21. The Midnight Manuscript 1998. While the world debated Y2K, Ballmer secretly handwrote a 147-page operations manual titled The Physics of Scale. Discovered in 2017 by a janitor at Microsoft's Building 34, its margins contain equations comparing software adoption to fluid dynamics. Page 83 reveals his radical theory. Great companies don't grow, they undergo phase transitions. This notebook became the unspoken blueprint for Microsoft's cloud transformation, with Ballmer quietly implementing its principles during late-night walkthroughs, where he'd rearrange engineers' desks like atoms in a reactor. Part 22. The Color of Pressure. Ballmer's famous red face presentations weren't just passion. They were a calculated neurological hack. After studying how TED speakers used wardrobe colors, he developed the chromatic intensity scale: blue shirts for strategic meetings, calm; yellow for brainstorming, energy; and his trademark red for make-or-break moments, visceral urgency. Microsoft's labs later proved red actually increases audience retention by 19%, not from the color itself, but from the wearer's physiological response to wearing it. The lesson: true persuasion begins with self-engineering. Part 23. The Empty Chair Drill 2003 Leadership Retreat. Ballmer places 12 empty chairs in a circle labeled with competitors' names: Google, Apple, Oracle. For 8 hours, Microsoft's execs had to argue from their rivals' perspectives while Ballmer played referee. When the VP of sales struggled to defend Google's ad model, Ballmer made him wear a student name tag for a week. This brutal empathy training directly inspired Microsoft's Azure strategy, because Ballmer understood you can't disrupt what you don't intimately comprehend. Part 24. The 17-minute rule. Ballmer's infamous meeting protocol, no presentation longer than 17 minutes, came from an unlikely source: his analysis of NBA timeout durations. He'd noticed 17 minutes was the optimal window for coaches to adjust strategies without losing players' attention. At Microsoft, this manifested as the shot clock. Digital timers counting down in every conference room. When the buzzer sounded, discussions automatically shifted to execution. The result? Meeting productivity increased 210% in one quarter, proving that constraints breed creativity. Part 25. The failure archives. Deep under Microsoft's campus lies the Vault, a repository containing every failed Ballmer project from the Zune to Windows Phone. But these aren't buried. They're displayed like museum pieces with detailed autopsy reports. New managers spend their first night here studying 3 key questions. 1. What did we genuinely believe? 2. Where did reality disagree? 3. What pain are we now uniquely qualified to solve? Ballmer's inscription at the entrance sets the tone. Wisdom tastes like crow. Eat hearty. Part 26. The Whiteboard Wars, 1995 to 2005. Every Friday at 4 p.m., Ballmer would challenge any employee to a whiteboard duel. Intense problem-solving sessions where the only rule was no idea too crazy. The sole surviving whiteboard, preserved under glass, shows his 3-step innovation framework. 1. Break math. Defy conventional calculations. 2. Break physics. Impossible user experiences. 3. Break hearts. Create visceral attachment. These sessions birthed both the Xbox controller and Microsoft's accessibility division, proving structured madness yields breakthroughs. Part 27. The Ticker-Tape Epiphany, 2009. Ballmer spends $1.2 million to recreate the 1929 stock ticker in Microsoft's lobby, not as decor, but as a behavioral experiment. For 6 months, every employee received a real-time printout showing how their work impacted stock price. The result? 83% of teams self-corrected priorities without management input. When the SEC questioned the legality, Ballmer's response became legendary. Transparency isn't regulation, it's oxygen. The experiment proved that when people see direct causation between effort and outcome, miracles happen organically. Part 28. The Ghost of Gary Kildall. Late at night, Ballmer would visit the Computer History Museum to study exhibits about Gary Kildall, the programmer whose missed meeting with IBM indirectly enabled Microsoft's rise. He kept Kildall's photo in his wallet as a memento mori. This obsession with the road not taken fueled Microsoft's partner ecosystem strategy, Ballmer insisting they treat every developer like they might be the next Gates. The lesson: true paranoia isn't fearing competitors, it's respecting alternate histories that nearly were. Part 29. The Jazz Conspiracy. Few knew Ballmer was a devoted jazz pianist. His midnight jam sessions with Seattle musicians weren't just stress relief. They were leadership laboratories. He noticed jazz bands achieved complex coordination without sheet music, relying instead on shared context and trust. This inspired Microsoft's controversial no-specs experiment, where teams built products using only verbal briefs. While 60% failed, the survivors, including early versions of Teams, demonstrated unprecedented agility, proof that chaos with purpose beats rigidity with planning. Part 30. The Final Whiteboard. The documentary's penultimate scene reveals Ballmer's actual last whiteboard at Microsoft, never before photographed. 3 phrases dominate. Teach them to want what we see. The bottleneck is always imagination. Love is measurable in debug hours. The camera slowly pulls back to show this hangs not in the CEO's office, but in the intern's cafeteria. Because Ballmer's ultimate insight was simple. Culture isn't decreed from above. It's whispered where the hungry listen. Part 31, The Algorithm of Empathy 2016. Ballmer quietly funds an AI startup analyzing basketball players' micro-expressions during games. But his real interest? Translating these emotional patterns to business. The resulting empathy matrix became Microsoft's secret weapon in negotiations, predicting when to push or pause based on a counterpart's unconscious tells. Ballmer himself trained for 300 hours with acting coaches to master what he called strategic vulnerability, the art of displaying just enough emotion to build trust while retaining control. When the system detected a negotiator's pupils dilating at certain numbers, Ballmer would suddenly offer coffee breaks, knowing chemical reset increased deal success by 33%. Part 32. The Legacy Codex discovered in 2023. Ballmer's personal lessons learned document, updated weekly since 1982. Not digital, handwritten on waterproof paper in military-grade ink. Its most revealing entry? June 2000. Today, I failed by succeeding. The antitrust victory made us lazy. This living scripture contains brutal self-assessments after every major decision, including his infamous 0 to 5 to 10 grading system, 0 catastrophe, 5 acceptable, 10 transformational. The kicker? He never awarded himself higher than a 7. The final page simply reads, Still learning to see around corners. Part 33. The Ghost Protocol. Microsoft's most guarded secret. Ballmer instituted Red Team X, a shadow group of junior employees tasked with attacking his ideas anonymously. Their 1998 takedown of his Windows Everywhere strategy saved the company from a disastrous hardware pivot. Ballmer celebrated by taking the entire team, still unidentified, to a Sonics game wearing paper bags over their heads, symbolizing that truth matters more than hierarchy. This practice continues today under the code name Ballmer's Ghost, with each CEO required to read unfiltered critiques from frontline staff quarterly. Part 34. The Time Capsule Conspiracy. During Microsoft's 25th anniversary, Ballmer buried 50 prototypes in a titanium vault under Building 92. Not products that succeeded, but those that failed spectacularly. Each includes a handwritten autopsy report detailing why they died. The capsule's opening mechanism? It only unlocks when Microsoft stock underperforms the S&P 500 for 12 consecutive months, forcing leadership to physically confront past failures. Current employees whisper about the Ballmer blood oath taken by new execs. I will honor our scars more than our trophies. Part 35. The Last Lecture. 2024. Stanford's Computer Science Department receives an unmarked box containing Ballmer's final gift. 300 hours of never-seen mentoring sessions with failed startup founders. The footage reveals his unique failure mapping technique, whiteboarding disasters as complex musical scores where wrong notes become new melodies. His closing advice to a weeping entrepreneur: You're not burning out, you're being forged. Now let me show you how to hold the hammer. The tape's postscript? A $50 million fund exclusively for founders who've gone bankrupt. because Ballmer knew true resilience is only proven in ashes. Part 36. The Human Operating System. The documentary's ultimate revelation comes from Ballmer's private medical files. His brain scans showed abnormal activity in the fusiform gyrus, the region governing pattern recognition. Neurologists called it acquired savant syndrome, likely developed from decades of force-reading financial statements, code, and sports analytics simultaneously. This explains his legendary Ballmer peaks, moments where he'd predict tech trends years early by seeing the shapes in the noise. The final frame shows his handwritten note to researchers: "Don't study my brain. Replicate the conditions that grew it." Epilogue. The infinity loop. We end where we began, with that flickering desk lamp in the empty 1995 office. But now we see what was hidden in the original shot. A small basketball hoop mounted above the door. Camera pulls back through decades of Ballmer's life, each scene containing another hidden hoop. Harvard dorm, first Microsoft office, Clippers locker room. The final image is your screen reflected in a backboard's glass with a single word fading in: shoot. Look at that face. That's the face of someone who's about to do something extraordinary. Maybe it's acing that English test. Maybe it's nailing that job interview. Maybe it's finally speaking without fear. Whatever it is, this is your developer's moment. Montage flashes: Ballmer as a kid delivering papers. Ballmer screaming on stage. Ballmer quietly studying code at 3 a.m., then cuts back to your reflection. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need perfect English. You just need one thing: Ballmer-level belief. So here's your mission, team. 1. Pause this video. 2. Open your notebook. Write today's date and one sentence. I will outwork my doubts by... Fill it with your goal, not someday, but today. This is your time, your legacy, your control over English, over your future, over your story. The world isn't changed by perfect people. It's changed by people who now go hit subscribe, because every legend needs a team. Then get out there and make Ballmer proud.